keep saying the two words Jesus spoke for centuries. People have searched for complex prayers, long rituals, and elaborate formulas, believing that spiritual power must always be complicated. Yet Jesus did the opposite. He reduced everything to simplicity. In the first moments of this message, understand this clearly. Jesus did not multiply words to create alignment. He distilled them. Two words, spoken from the correct inner position, were enough to reorder situations, calm storms, and realign outcomes. These were not magical phrases, nor religious slogans. They were expressions of certainty. Most people speak from reaction, fear, or desire. Jesus spoke from authority and completion. That is why alignment followed him naturally. When he spoke, circumstances adjusted without resistance. This chapter restores a forgotten truth from tradition. Words spoken repeatedly do not create power. Words spoken from alignment reveal power already present. The two words Jesus spoke were not meant to convince God or persuade reality. They were confirmations of inner knowing. Repeating them is not about forcing results, but about stabilizing the inner state until contradiction dissolves. When you keep saying them, you are not asking reality to change you, while allowing yourself to align with what is already ordered. Alignment does not arrive dramatically. It begins quietly. Small tensions soften. Resistance fades. Situations that felt disjointed begin to rearrange without effort. This is why Jesus did not chase alignment, e cari d'italiano, and everything he encountered responded. This chapter invites you to stop searching for new words and return to the ones that already worked. Not because they are old, but because they are precise. When spoken correctly, they do not create urgency. They create coherence. And coherence is what reality responds to first. Why repetition works only when alignment is present. Repetition is one of the most misunderstood elements in spiritual teaching. Many believe that repeating words is a way to persuade God, convince the universe, or overpower doubt through volume. Jesus never taught repetition that way. When he repeated words or truths, he was not trying to gain, he was remaining aligned. This distinction changes everything. Repetition, in the way Jesus used it, was not effort, it was consistency. Most people repeat words while their inner state argues against them. They say something outwardly, then immediately contradict it inwardly with fear, worry, or analysis. That inner contradiction neutralizes the words. Jesus did not alternate between certainty and doubt. He remained internally stable. That stability is what repetition protects. When you keep saying the same aligned words, you are not increasing force. You are preventing regression. Each repetition is a refusal to return to the old inner narrative. This is why repetition only works when alignment is present. Without alignment, repetition feels exhausting. With alignment, it feels grounding. Tradition teaches that the inner world responds first to what is consistently accepted as true. Repetition helps the mind settle into that acceptance. It quiets competing thoughts and stabilizes perception. Jesus understood that reality mirrors the dominant inner state, not occasional declarations. By keeping the same words alive internally, he ensured that his inner state remained coherent. Over time, coherence produces alignment, and alignment produces movement without strain. This chapter is important because it removes superstition from repetition. You are not chanting. You are not persuading. You are maintaining a position. When repetition feels calm, alignment is strengthening. When it feels urgent, alignment has not yet settled. Jesus' words worked because they were repeated from certainty, not desperation. The instruction to keep saying is not about effort, it is about guarding your inner consistency. Once consistency is established, alignment begins to express itself outwardly. Circumstances soften. Resistance fades. Things begin to align not because you forced them, but because you stopped contradicting them internally. The two words were spoken from completion, not desire. To understand why the two words Jesus spoke carried such power, you must understand the state from which they were spoken. Jesus did not speak from desire. He spoke from completion. Desire reaches forward. Completion stands still. Most people speak because they want something to change. Jesus spoke because something was already settled internally. That is why alignment followed him rather than being chased. The two words were never meant to create something new. They were meant to affirm what was already accepted as true. This is a crucial distinction. Words spoken from desire highlight absence. Words spoken from completion confirm presence. Tradition teaches that the inner state always precedes the outer reflection. Jesus aligned the inner state first, then spoke. When he said words of authority, they carried no tension. There was no emotional charge, no urgency, no need for reinforcement. That calm authority is the signature of completion. This chapter matters because it explains why so many people repeat the right words and see no change. They are speaking from longing, not from alignment. Longing keeps the outcome in the future. Completion collapses. Time. When you keep saying the two words Jesus spoke, the purpose is not to convince yourself they will work. The purpose is to settle into the same inner posture from which Jesus spoke them. Over time, repetition from completion retrains the mind. It stops reaching forward and starts standing firm. This is when alignment begins. Situations reorganize because the inner signal has changed. Reality responds to what feels final, not to what feels hopeful. Jesus' words were final. They carried a sense of this is already so. When you learn to speak from that same position, alignment no longer feels dramatic. It feels natural. Small adjustments appear. Friction reduces. What once felt scattered begins to arrange itself quietly. This is the power of words spoken from completion. They do not demand alignment. Te rebial italiano. Alignment begins internally, before it appears externally. One of the greatest misunderstandings about alignment is the belief that it begins with visible change. In the teaching of Jesus, alignment always began internally, long before circumstances adjusted. This is why many people become discouraged. They repeat the words, but they keep watching the outer world for confirmation. Jesus never did that. He understood that the inner state is the cause, and the outer world is the effect. When you keep saying the two words Jesus spoke, their first function is not to rearrange events, but to reorder perception. Alignment begins as a quiet internal shift. You start reacting less. You stop forcing outcomes. You feel less urgency around things that once caused anxiety. This internal calm is not indifference. It is coherence. Tradition teaches that when the inner world becomes coherent, the outer world has no choice but to follow. But it follows on its own schedule, not yours. This is where many people interfere. They speak aligned words, then immediately check reality, analyze timing, or question progress. That checking pulls the mind back into division. Jesus avoided this by remaining inwardly settled. He trusted the order he had aligned with. Alignment does not announce itself loudly. It feels almost anticlimactic at first. Small things shift. Conversations change tone. Obstacles soften without explanation. These are not coincidences. They are early signs that the inner signal has changed. This chapter exists to reset expectation. Alignment is not something you witness immediately. It is something you embody quietly. When embodiment stabilizes, manifestation follows naturally. Jesus never chased proof because proof was unnecessary. Once alignment was achieved, the instruction to keep saying the words is not about repetition alone. It is about maintaining the inner posture that allows alignment to mature without interference. When alignment is internal, external order becomes inevitable. Why alignment feels ordinary, not dramatic. Another reason people miss alignment is because it rarely feels dramatic. Modern thinking associates change with intensity, emotion, and visible upheaval. Jesus showed the opposite. When alignment occurred, things felt normal, almost to normal. This is because true alignment removes friction rather than creating sensation. When you keep saying the two words Jesus spoke, you are not summoning excitement. You are dissolving resistance. Resistance is loud. Alignment is quiet. This chapter matters because many people abandon the process when nothing exciting happens. They assume nothing is working. In reality, things are stabilizing. Alignment simplifies decisions. Choices feel clearer. You stop second-guessing yourself. Certain paths lose their pull without effort. Others feel naturally correct. This ordinariness is not failure. It is precision. Jesus did not create chaos to prove power. He restored order. Order feels calm. It does not demand attention. It integrates seamlessly into daily life. When alignment deepens, you may notice fewer emotional highs and lows. This is not stagnation. It is balan. Ancient tradition teaches that order is subtle because it does not compete for attention. It simply functions. When alignment is present, life stops feeling like a struggle against circumstances and starts feeling like a cooperation with them. This is why Jesus' words did not produce spectacle every time he spoke. Often, the alignment they created unfolded quietly, naturally, without witnesses. This chapter reframes your expectations. If alignment feels ordinary, that is a sign you are close. Drama belongs to resistance. Alignment belongs to order. An order does not need to announce itself to be effective. Alignment is maintained by what you stop saying. The final and most overlooked aspect of keeping the two words Jesus spoke is understanding what must stop alongside what continues. Alignment is not only created by the words you repeat, but by the words you no longer entertain. Jesus was disciplined, not just in speech, but in silence. He did not argue internally with what he declared externally. Many people repeat aligned words, but continue speaking fear, doubt, or complaint throughout the day. That ongoing contradiction weakens alignment. This chapter is crucial because it reveals that alignment is fragile only when divided attention is allowed. Keeping the two words alive internally means refusing to rehearse opposing narratives. This does not require suppression or force. It requires awareness. When a contradictory thought arises, you do not fight it. You simply return to the aligned position. Over time, this retrains the mind. Old habits of reaction lose momentum. The inner environment becomes quieter, more stable. Jesus maintained alignment because he did not undo it with careless inner speech. He knew that reality responds to what is dominant, not what is occasional. By guarding silence as carefully as speech, alignment becomes self. This chapter completes the teaching by showing that alignment is maintained through restraint. You do not need more words. You need fewer contradictions. When the inner conversation settles, alignment becomes natural. And when alignment is natural, things begin to align without effort, without force, and without the need to constantly remind yourself that it is working. When alignment becomes a way of being, not a technique. The final stage of this teaching is where most people unknowingly stop too early. They treat alignment as something they do for a moment, instead of something they become. Jesus never treated words as a temporary tool. The two words he spoke were an expression of his permanent inner position. This is why alignment followed him everywhere, not just in moments of intention. When you keep saying the two words correctly, something subtle but decisive happens over time. Alignment stops feeling like an exercise and starts feeling like your natural state. You no longer measure whether it is working. You no longer look for signs every hour. You simply live from coherence. This is where everything truly begins to align. Atista stays. The words are no longer used to fix problems. They are used to maintain orientation. Life still moves. Challenges still arise, but they no longer pull you out of position. You respond without panic. You decide without confusion. You wait without anxiety. This is not passivity. It is mastery. Jesus demonstrated this repeatedly. He did not adjust his inner state to circumstances. Circumstances adjusted to him. That only happens when alignment is stable. When alignment becomes a way of being, you stop alternating between faith and doubt. You stop rehearsing outcomes mentally. You stop narrating fear internally. The inner environment becomes quieter, and in that quiet, order asserts itself. This chapter matters because it completes the teaching honestly. The purpose of repeating the two words is not to create a single breakthrough. It is to train consistency. Over time, consistency becomes identity, and identity determines experience. When alignment is embodied, you no longer need constant reassurance. You do not feel the urge to explain what you are doing to others. You simply move. Small things fall into place first. Conversations resolve themselves. Timing improves without effort. What once felt blocked loses resistance. None of this feels dramatic, and that is the point. Jesus did not live in constant miracles. He lived in constant order. Miracles were simply moments where that order became visible. When you reach this stage, you understand why keep saying was the instruction. Not because alignment is fragile, but because consistency makes it permanent. The two words are no longer something you repeat to change reality. They are something you live from. And when you live from alignment, reality has no option but to reflect it. If this teaching brought clarity, Pause before seeking more. Reflect on what you keep saying internally each day. Share your insight in the comments, subscribe for deeper traditional teachings, and allow alignment to become steady rather than rushed.